Hi again, this is Ralph Boehm, Litchfield.
And Erica Layon from Derry.
Okay, the first thing today for legislative input, what we have is building aid. We know Litchfield and Derry are both looking to build a school. And so you can put this up on the screen. The first column here is year 24-25, which is this biennium, which means it starts June 1st of this year, ends in 24, ends in 25. We're going to get $48.7 million of building aid. Rochester is number 1 on the list. We're number 5. Derry's number 6. Their cost of what they're going to get is $20 million. That leaves $28.7. Colebrook needs $10 million, so that leaves $18.7. Now 26-27. Monadnock, there's going to be another $60.7 million in building aid. They need $19 million, so that leaves $60.4. And then 28-29, there's another $72.7 million. Concord is getting $70 million in building aid.
You must be building the Taj Mahal.
Yeah, I don't know, the whole news. Anyway, but the thing is, Concord gets more money than percentage-wise. It ranges from 30 to 50%. Litchfield only gets 30% of the cost. Reason being is one of the things they use in the criteria is median household income, which I've fought for years and years and years because it's comparing apples and oranges in a lot of places. For example, years ago I looked it up and it probably hadn't changed that much. If you look at median household income for Litchfield, and you look at the median male income and the median female income and add it together, you're going to get the median household income because in Litchfield, both parents work in most houses. If you look at Manchester, the median household income is nearly the same as the median male income. Nearly one person household, one parent household. So 28-29, Litchfield needs the $10 million. And Derry needs $34 million, so that's it. So June 27. So I guess you could say that we don't really need to buy that land this year. Okay, anyway. But then 15 years ago, we were looking at a new building and it could fit at where LMS is. So I don't know what the big deal is now. And a bigger school. So anyway, so now on to what's happening in Concord the last couple of weeks. Well, this was bills from 22nd and 23rd. One of the big issues we have is people that don't show up. So we lost a couple of good bills because of 31 Republicans didn't show up on the 23rd. My argument has always been, if you can't do the time, don't run for office. From the old line, can't do the time, don't do the crime. Mm-hmm. Same thing. Well, anyway, the marijuana bill passed, 234 to 127, but that's not enough to override the governor's veto. Same thing happened last year. But then also, there was a committee, another bill, HB 581, that would have pretty much made all drugs legal. That failed 286 to 70. I mean, come on, folks. HB 57, that was a bill on minimum wage.
That was making a $15 an hour minimum wage.
Right. The argument they've been doing for years and this, it's not a living wage. No, it's never supposed to be a living wage. I mean, come on. I remember years ago when I first started working, it was like $1.25 an hour. That was the minimum wage. But at that point, on my way to work after school, I could stop at Burger King on the way and buy a Whopper, French fries, and milkshake for 77 cents. Mm-hmm. Now what is? You live the minimum wage, that you change that just causes more inflation.
Well-
because what you raise it to, then everybody else is going to get a raise. Yeah.
Well, and then there's the other part too. We're talking about how much it costs to go to college and do all this other training. There's a lot of jobs that don't need college, but a lot of that is on the job training.
Right.
So if you look at arborists, the people who are climbing trees and taking their cranes up trees, they need ground crew. So they need people who are there and they're learning what to do, they're helping out, and they're seeing this whole system. We follow a couple of these guys on YouTube, and a couple times they've said, here's the harness to one of their groundies.
Right.
And so they're getting a huge education by being paid a lower wage.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity to get exposure and see if it's what you want to do and move up.
Yeah, but look what's happening like in McDonald's. I mean, they got these kiosks there in the store for ordering your stuff, so they don't have to pay somebody. I mean, a lot of restaurants are doing that. You got the thing on the table to order, so they don't have to pay somebody. So that's what's going to happen.
Well, I was actually talking to somebody about something interesting with that. Out in Death Valley, there was borax mining, and there was this huge borax mining town, and they had schools, they had everything. And then there were unions that came in and were making wage demands, and they ended up automating it. So now they have a bare bones 1,000 people, but they had
Right.
had a city bigger than Derry,
Right.
just all built
Now they
around
don't
it
have
because
nothing.
it pushed it past the capacity, and they had to go to machines instead of supporting a community. Sorry, it's the economist coming through.
Now, here's one that I've been hoping somebody would do years and years and years. It's now HB 108 in Children and Family Law. It'll penalize penalize people for false reports on child abuse. And I've known this happen to a few people that I know. Somebody calls up and then DCYS comes and investigates and spends all the time, and there's nothing. They get the fault. We find nothing. I mean, so the problem is, and you don't know who's doing that. Somebody can report and saying that you were abusing your kids, and it's completely confidential. But now, that can be made, that you can find out.
And yeah, they still keep it anonymous, but they hold on to it so that if there's a pattern of somebody calling in and making these malicious complaints, then instead of wasting the resources,
Right.
where there's kids that really, really need the help, then they can do something to address
Right.
it.
And then we have another bill. This was a good one. It was public display of chest. What would it call it? In other words, going topless. They tried to make this a state law saying, but that failed. The problem is municipalities are doing it, like Laconia is from Motorcycle Weekend. But the thing is the way the state works is towns or cities cannot pass laws unless the state says you can. In other words, but they're doing it now, and there was a bill to stop that, but it failed, so they're still going to let the towns do it, like Laconia for Motorcycle Week was a big one. I guess what I heard is Hampton, they're topless on the beach, so I don't know. But anyway, it's HB 201, that's penalty for driving without a license. Now it's just a violation for the first time. Then if it happens again within a year, then it's now a misdemeanor. So
Yeah,
the first time, yeah.
And that's not for somebody who has a suspended license. It's for somebody who's
Somebody
never
doesn't
had a
have one,
license.
Never had one. Right.
My friends that didn't get one up through age 20 or for whichever reason.
Right. Oh, yeah. And then HB 35 in education. Last year we added, on your student IDs in high school and whatever, they put the suicide hotline on the back that started. This year they're adding the National Eating Disorder hotline to the back of the ID. So there's a hotline for that. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, the problem with that is it's not always staffed 24 hours a day.
I know. Yeah, so-
And part of it is people won't think that eating disorders are a mental health issue, and there's a 24-hour always staffed line also on these IDs. So there was a big argument that this was going to possibly deny people the help that they need. But right now we're having a
now there's no-
conversation about it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
on there, and as long as somebody's there to pick up the phone, these students will get
Yeah.
help.
I mean, that is a problem. I mean, Karen Carpenter always comes to mind about what gets me on that. Nobody noticed she was getting skinny, you know, like her brother, or, you know. I mean, and then HB 45, Committee to Study Student Loan Forgiveness. So here we go again. And that, I think everybody, Democrats and Republicans, didn't like that one. It failed 312 to 43. You know, the good no. So now there's the constitutional amendment coming, and this will probably be for people to vote on this time. Retirement age for judges. It's in the New Hampshire Constitution. Judges and sheriffs have to retire at 70. Now this was done 200 years ago, when nobody lived past 50. Yeah. So it's got to be a constitutional amendment to change it to 75, just for the judges. Why do the sheriffs? I don't know. So anyway, so that'll hopefully, that looks like it'll probably go through and pass. So it takes 2/3 of the House to vote for that, until there wasn't enough votes to pass it. Now it goes to the Senate, and Senate passes, and then the next election in 24, it'll be on the ballot. And then one I was really yelling about for years and years and years, the Budget Committee. The selectmen have a rep, and the school board has a rep. And there was a bill which I've been the selectman, I've been on the Budget Committee, and I've been in the school board. And I never really liked that selectmen and school board members have a vote on the Budget Committee. Now the bill makes it, if it passes again, ex officio. In other words, because what happens is, and it's happened when I was on the school board and Budget Committee and selectmen, it's always 2 votes to the positive, because the selectmen aren't going to say no to the school board budget, and the school board's not going to say no to the selectmen's budget. So it's always 2 positives right there, which isn't right, you know. And sometimes I would say that was like 90% of the time, because sometimes there was argument, but one knows that if you vote against mine, I'm going to vote against yours. I mean, so the ex officio members, and the argument, well, then they won't show up. They have to show up if they want the budget to pass. You know, so like this year we had budgets that were 5-4-0.
Oh, wow.
And then 4-5, but 5-4-0. So it was like, if those two, it could have been 3-4-0, because we know how the selectmen's rep and the budget school board rep voted. You know, of course they voted yes. So then it would basically what happened was it failed. Then it was tabled, which means it can be taken off the table at some future date when they think they can pass it, like what happened. So it can be taken off the table then. And then see if we can pass it. So take a couple of votes to reconsider the failed, and then go for voting for it. And this has been on for nearly every term that I've been up there, but for some reason I don't think most people get it, because there's a lot of people from cities and towns that don't have SB2 and whatnot. They don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, we don't have a budget committee in Derry. Our town council sets the town budget,
Right.
and it's not even voted on.
Right.
And the school board sets a budget, but because the school board's in SB2, we vote on that one.
Right,
So
yeah.
complex. There's
Yeah.
so many different ways to run towns and cities in New Hampshire. It's just wild. So that's part of the understanding too. There's a lot of representatives that just don't have to deal with this.
Well, I remember when Hudson had a town council at one point, some 30 years ago, and they did away with it because the argument with the budget committee, they had the municipal budget law committee. So the town council gives the budget committee the budget. So then the budget committee works on it and gives it back to the town council. The town council ignores it and puts on what they want anyway.
That sounds like the fiscal advisory board on the Derry School Board.
I know it. You know what the worst? school board in Concord. They are the legislative branch also. Nothing goes, and they're
Nothing
not
goes
part
to
of
the
the
voters?
city, and they're not part of the city.
Wow.
They have their own charter in Concord, so it doesn't go to the voters. Just like a city, the town council votes, but they're supposed to be representing the people.
So the Concord School Board is the one who comes up with the budget, is the only one that votes on the budget, and then
Is
they're
the-
the ones asking for the $70 million school that's
Yeah.
going to delay building aid to Derry and Litchfield?
Yeah,
That's just crazy.
well, not 70, their schools.
Well, their school, they're asking for $70 million in aid.
No,
for
that's
their
the
school.
aid coming, because that'd be at 40%, so it's probably 150,000 or something they're
Yeah.
getting. But anyway, but that's how that works. No. So you get anything on HHS that you want to?
So last session, on the 22nd and the 23rd for Health and Human Services, we had a couple of bills that were expanding Medicaid to a couple groups. There was an argument about having women extended from 2 months to 12 months after birth to have them on Medicaid for a certain window of incomes. And also about immigrants that are pregnant or that are kids up to age 24 being able to get on Medicaid sooner.
Not illegal immigrants,
No.
legal immigrants.
Well, part of the reason it died last session is when we had this same bill that was for lawful, so following the law immigrants. We got
Okay.
testimony from everybody who came in, got caught, got asylum, and then because they got asylum, they were now lawful.
And according to the current administration, everybody gets asylum, so everybody would be legal.
I mean, and this is one of the things that muddies the water, because the more aid we give out to everybody, the harder it is to welcome new people in. Because if you're just going to come in and work and do the same thing as everybody else, there's a lot less of a reason to build up bigger gates, and then we can have more people that want to come in. So that was one of those. Both of those passed on to go to finance, and now we have to talk about how much money that's actually going to cost.
Right.
We had another one about giving out coupons for the SNAP benefits at farmers markets and farm stands.
I remember that from last year.
Yeah, last year it was a $10 benefit, and that was just with federal money. So this time they sweetened the pot to make it $30. But that means that it was $200,000. It was a bunch of money coming from the state, and we have a lot of other places where we need that money.
Right,
So-
like building aid.
Like building aid. So many places that we need it. And so because it was state money coming in, and it's basically a field trip to the farm, and if you're on food stamps or if you're getting the temporary assistance to needy families, there's a bunch of ways that people already have access to that. And, quite honestly, there's a great program with agricultural extension to get seeds where you can grow your own plants.
Right.
I'd like to see that expanded to
Right.
more families too.
Yeah. So that's sort of to me like a boondoggle. I mean, you can go to your regular grocery store and get the same stuff that the farmer's market is selling from the same farms, even locally.
Yeah.
But those grow at the farmer's market, they're usually more expensive.
They are. We do pretty well, but I can't afford to shop at a farmer's market.
No.
That's why we grow our own produce.
Right.
And in dairy, they actually set the prices at the farmer's market. They
But if
tell
you
you how
got-
much you're allowed to
But if
charge.
you got $30 on SNAP, you can go.
Exactly. It's like when you go spend your parents' money at the fair. You're buying stuff you'd never buy with your own money.
Right. So now we got a couple of big things happened. You got anything else on HHS? The insulin.
So we had an
Diabetes.
insulin one. So anybody who pays attention to the cost of drugs knows that insulin is really expensive. And you have two groups. You have the people who are born and their body doesn't make insulin, which is a huge issue, and then people who get it later on in life with health issues or food issues. So insulin is incredibly expensive, but that's because there's not really generic insulin. They used to get it from pigs and cows. And so you'd have it and you'd be able to get it and it was pretty cheap. But now they make them as these crazy monoclonal antibodies, or you start them off in rats, and they're really, really complicated to grow, and it's a lot more expensive, and there's not really any generic versions of it. So it's a way better insulin. It definitely improves people's lives, but it's more expensive because of that.
Right.
So they had tried to do it through a program that never got funded and never got created. So even if we wanted to try and get $30 a month insulin for people, that it wouldn't have been possible without spending millions and millions of dollars and creating a whole new government program that doesn't exist.
But don't most insurances pay?
Most insurances pay, and that's also an area where I know that if you have some of those prescription assistances, and they wrote the bill so broadly that you could argue that it would include insulin pumps and some of the really, really innovative insulin products, as opposed to a real basic one of, if we're going to cover the cost, we'll get you the super basic, and if you want more, then you can figure out how to pay for that innovation. I mean, it's a really tough spot.
So that bill
because,
got killed.
Yeah, that bill got killed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why it was roll called, but it was, and I think it was 60 or 70 people. Do you have the tally in there?
Yeah, well, let me find it. But yeah, it didn't make it. I mean,
No,
it was on
yeah.
the second day.
It was on the second day. I was
Yeah.
expecting it to be a voice vote. It was right after Columbus Day.
283 to 61.
Okay,
So,
I actually had stepped out for a moment, not realizing that my bill was going to come up, and I had to pretty much run into the room and run up to the podium since I was the one to speak on it.
yeah, the thing was, it's interesting, you mentioned that. There was a bill to rename Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. That was made, ought to pass with amendment, but then the amendment was to change it to Italian Heritage Day instead of Indigenous, which has been going on forever. Make another day, don't, you know.
There actually is another day for Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yeah.
And some of my committee members who are really involved with the Indigenous community were talking about how they don't want to be tied in with Columbus. They want their own day.
Right. And it was tabled anyway. Well, no matter what you believe about Columbus, he did something that was very dangerous. Nobody knew where he was going. He didn't know where he was going. You know, he thought he might hit India, but, you know, so, you know, if you think of it that way. Now, bills that were taken off the table at the last minute. HB 430, which was passed, a couple of weeks ago, it was a tie vote for passing, and that's a bill that the Democrats put in to try to do away with the education freedom account. They want everybody to go to public school. So their bill was, before you can get an EFA, you have to go to public school for a year. Even if you already have kids in an EFA, your brothers and sisters will still have to spend a year in a public school. I mean, it's the way of, let's do away with it.
Well, I think it actually would slingshot the kids who are already getting an EFA right back into the program.
Right.
They're upset because there's families who are already educating kids on their own dime that are now getting state funds. But this is really just the state match. And, you know, these families don't make a ton of money. It's less than 300 times the poverty level. And I know everybody's bills have gone up by about that $4,000 or more, and that's what that matches.
So what happened, they took it off the table because it was tabled after the tie vote a couple of weeks ago, and it passed because, like I said, there were 31 Republicans that weren't there. So anyway, so hopefully the Senate will kill it and the governor should veto
Well,
it.
it's still going to finance.
What? Oh,
It's still
gonna
going
go
to the finance committee.
So we have another vote on it.
So when bills spend a lot of money, they go to a second committee where the finance committee figures out how they actually fit
Right.
into the budget. Because you don't want to vote for a bunch of programs and then not have a way to pay for it. Because unlike in DC, we have to have a balanced budget. We
Right.
can't have a surplus or a deficit.
Right. Gee, like I explained last time, it was like the federal government can spend anything they want because they'll just print money, you know, and go into debt. The local towns, school district, they can really still the same thing, spend what they not want and just raise property taxes. Okay. The state doesn't work that way. The state's got to look at their finance first. How much money, how much revenue we have, and then you can't spend more than that revenue. So unless you make a new tax, and nobody wants to do that, like an income tax.
Almost nobody wants to do that.
I know there are some. Most Democrats don't want it either, but there are some that always every year pushing an income tax. Now they gave away with pushing a sales tax because what would happen if they pushed the sales tax? For example, the Pheasant Lane Mall would close, Salem would shut down. I mean, you know.
Well, especially because why would you buy makeup at those counters if they can't even apply it?
Right. Yeah. Right.
You
Yeah.
need a beauty license to apply makeup
Oh, yeah, that's
at the Clinique counter.
Yeah. But then the other one was HB 234, which they also took off the table and passed it. this will increase your electric rates. I mean, it's the Reggie thing, to do away with fossil fuels and all that. You have to pay extra if you're using fossil fuels and all that. It will just basically increase your electric rates, because the only way you can make electricity is with fossil fuels. You're not going to use wind turbines in New Hampshire. They freeze. I mean, solar panels, they work good on your house, but they're not going to work good to build everything. I mean,
Yeah, solar panels aren't very good in winter in New England.
No, they're covered with snow.
And even the angle of the sun, I was trying to design for them.
Oh, yeah.
And because the sun changes so much here, it just doesn't work out very well.
No.
Did you realize that when the Democrats had the majority in the House last week, both of the bills they did are going to cost families that are on the margin more money?
Yeah.
So you have families that have scrimped and saved to send their kids to private school or to teach them at home. And then you have all of us that are struggling with our energy bills.
Right.
And then they pull those bills from the table, and they're just passing the cost on to the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense, because like, for example, the Democrat running for governor, Tom Sherman, I mean, he would be against EFA, but he's rich enough to send his kids to private school. So that seems to be the thing over the years. It's okay for themselves if they're rich enough to send a kid. They don't want the lower class people going to their private school. It's so hypocritical, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, they want to keep out those families where it's a big financial sacrifice, and that's just not okay.
No. And the same thing they were arguing about doing in education. I just sat in a little bit in the committee about why should the state offer EFA for rich people? I'm going, well, wait a minute. For special ed, somebody can be making millions of dollars and still get the state and federal government to pay for their special ed. That's federal law. So what's the difference?
Well, and we don't ask rich families to pay part of their share to go to public school.
Right.
It's the same money that follows the student to the public school, or that follows them now with the EFA. So if we don't check somebody's income for the public school, why are we doing it there?
Right. Yeah, I know. It's only for them. So anyway, we got some big sessions next week. Vote on a bunch more bills, because all the bills pretty much got to be done pretty much in March. Then we get the Senate bills. So we're looking for an hour meeting in a couple weeks. So with that, I guess we'll see you in 2 weeks, and for a whole hour.
And don't forget to vote on local election day on the 14th.
March 14th, and we have a committee meeting that day.
No.
March 14th is, don't forget to vote. No. But anyway, so good night or good day, and thank you, Erica.
Bye. Thank you, Ralph.